Today, oh my gosh, we may be all over the board in things we talk about because we've got a guest. And yes, this guest has been the winner of one of our drinkies from last year, one of our most popular episodes. And so we'll see what happens. We'll see if we can raise the bar this year and see if we can get to be the most popular episode.
Challenge extended.
Challenge extended. I think what's interesting about this conversation today is you've got a few accountants who have then gone and built tech companies that sell things back into accountants. I even realized this with you, Matthew, this week when you mentioned, oh yeah, I'm the CEO of VerifyiQ. I'm like, oh, I forgot you were that. We'll talk a little bit about what it's like having to deal with selling into accountants. They're a rough crowd sometimes to sell into and to deal with. We all know that, being them, but also what scaling our businesses look like. And this always, with this great guest, ends up being a wide range of interesting conversations. He typically likes to flip the script and interview us. So we'll see where all this goes. All of this here today on Drink What You Think, the happy hour podcast, where quite a few of us are building some weird, interesting organizations, especially in the accounting landscape. Mr. May, who's my co-host today, just maybe for today. We'll see if he sticks around because there've been some other people interviewing for your job lately. One of them might be on with us right now. Who is our sponsor today?
The sponsor of today's episode of Drink What You Think is Keeper. Keeper is, oh wait, they didn't send the beer. Never mind.
Oh, stop. That would boo. It's en route. It's in transit. Check in transit.
Okay, then the sponsorship announcement is en route too.
Unfair. We still give it to Keeper. This week's sponsor is Keeper. And we have here from none other than the co-founder, CEO of Keeper, Mr. Ben Stein. Welcome back to the show, our friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
I promise you we are better at developing software than we are at beer logistics.
What are you drinking today, man?
Yeah, what are you drinking?
I am tragically, and still from the last episode, gluten intolerant, so I am not drinking anything today. I got a nice glass of water just off frame, but yeah, I am pining for a Shiner Bock, which is what I bought that is still en route.
Is there, Matthew, are you cracking yours? Are there gluten-free beers? I assume there are some.
They're like kind of a pain to find and buy. So I mostly drink wine when I drink, but
you can drink wine with us. That's fine.
You can always do that. So we'll see. Matthew, what do you got over there?
I've got this I've never tried. I've got the Jungle Boogie, which is way overdue drinking. So from Chicago, Illinois. So it's going to be, this is one of Rochelle's favorites.
That's one of my wife's favorites. Super unique Chicago beer from Mr. Randy Crabtree. We can't get rid of that guy. He's all over this podcast, the beer guru. He's great. I am drinking Murphy's Irish Stouts. Yes, It is almost St. Patty's. We're filming this a couple days before St. Patrick's Day. So it felt like a nice Irish Stout would be appropriate. So Matthew, you took a quick sip there. What'd you think of?
It was smoother than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I've been really intimidated by this beer for a long time. I don't know why. It's been in my fridge for a long time.
Beer. It's a great
It's a little pale wheat ale with whatever the hell tea that is.
It's got some kind of tea in there. I know it's a little fancy for you.
Rooibos tea?
It's called Rooibos tea, Matthew.
Okay.
Please try to. Well, of course, the good Irish.
Cheers.
Cheers to all of us being here. Tastes like St. Patrick's Day. All right, let's get into it. So I guess I'll ask my first question. We'll ping pong this thing around. Both of you two being CEOs of technology companies who build a product for accountants that have to sell them into accountants. What is your least favorite thing about having to sell into accountants? I assume they're a pain in the butt to sell things to. Who wants to take this one first? What makes it the biggest challenge selling into accountants?
I will give you 2 words, and those 2 words are busy and season. I don't think there is a more deadline driven, like busy season driven industry than accounting. Because even outside of the busy season that is like classically from January or February to the tax deadline in April, there's there's January 1099 deadline, there's your March tax deadline, there's your mid-April tax deadline, then there's September tax deadline, there's October tax deadline, and then like between those, you have people who are exhausted from having like rightfully so exhausted from how much work they've had to put in to hit those deadlines. So it makes it very tough to find a time when people can actually sit and dispassionately look at whether software can make their lives better.
Ben, do you have to, in that regard? And again, we're going to assume most people know who Keeper is. We'll have lots of links in the pod to get there. It is fantastic software. It really is kind of a do everything software for bookkeeping practices and CAS practices. But do you have to alter any of your sales strategy and sales cycle for busy season? Do you just expect, do you forecast like this is just going to be a downtime, we're not going to book appointments? Do you actually go that far with it?
Yeah, it's challenging. And I don't think we do anything with like pure absolutes.
Right.
We do have to like basically coach our sales team. So whereas like I am like, we have some team members, especially some on our sales team who are accountants. I myself like still do our books today. In fact, that's what I was doing last weekend. But some of our sales team just comes from sales backgrounds. We have to really explain to them like what it's like to walk in the shoes of an accountant, so that they're not just like blasting cold emails that not only get ignored, but then also like get seen and read and like stored in the back of like, this is a software I hate now for having reached out to me on April 14th. So I think we have to kind of tailor that. But no, it's mostly like things at the margin. Like we have to try and just not be assholes and be empathetic. And we happen to be doing that a lot. And it does end up meaning in our business that like April is going to be a slower time and May is going to be like catch up from April. But
oh yeah, for sure.
But it's not crazy.
Matthew,
For
what
me,
do you dislike about selling into people like us?
Well, the hardest thing at VerifyiQ for me is it's not selling into people like us, it's selling into like who's buying the product as a firm kind of that's at a stage where we were 8 years ago. So like it's hard for me not to try to build to like what they're going to need in the future and like prioritize what they need then. This is kind of like evolves over time. So like building to the $3 million firm need, if you fix that, then they make it to the bigger, you know what I mean? Like that. So try not to build to like what Acuity needs versus what like that.
So there's some biases, right? By unfortunately knowing the environment so well and coming from like, hey, we built something for us.
Well, I mean,
but didn't someone, I don't think who said this, of like, it's maybe a Steve Jobs, or it's to attribute to him if you don't know who else, but like you're trying to build a product that the customer doesn't even know they need yet. Is that what you're saying you're doing, Matthew? They don't even know they need,
Well, they need it once they grow to a certain size. So they don't know. Yeah, they don't know that they need it. But that's a really hard product to sell. Like something that they don't know that like Steve Jobs has not been duplicated in very many industries. I have to say.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay.
Matthew, would you consider yourself the Steve Jobs of accounting?
If I did, then I would be wrong. So no, I don't. But like, I think that's my biggest challenge is thinking like scaling down to like blocking and tackling what people need at this stage, which is like our target market was like that $1 million to $3 million firm, as opposed to we're kind of north of 10 now. So like we're just having different problems and making sure we're solving the right problems for the right people is my biggest challenge, and balancing that with what they'll need in the future. It's just a tightrope, it feels like.
Well, Kenji, I'm not sure if you had a next question, but I want to use this opportunity to hijack the conversation.
Do it.
What are the like biggest differences between the problems you have as a $3 million firm and the problems you have as a $10 million firm?
The biggest challenge is making decisions without as much context on the individual situations. So in a $3 million firm, when people talk about the problems, you have some context on the client, the employee, and things like that. So trying to make decisions with data without as much context is a totally different ballgame to me. Because there are very few clients have much context on, fewer that Kenji has context on. But he
Yeah.
knows more of the employees than I do because he does the round robins. But like we have less context on the specific situation. So like making decisions with data over context without context is much more difficult to me.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's falls into a kind of a larger bucket of just the communication challenges just become it's just so much more heightened. I was just before this call, as Matthew referred, doing these round robins. I think I'm doing this kind of listening tour with our employees right now, and I'm just trying to spend some time with individuals. And I was just talking to one of our team members who has been with us for almost 10 years. And I was just a great person to talk to get perspective, because probably 10 years ago, right, we were a lot smaller. And she talked about, she's like, yeah, I still love working here. It has really changed a lot to where I don't get to interact with you as much and other team members. And we were talking about some problems that have persisted, that have stayed there for a long period of time. And you're like, why haven't we solved these things yet? And also to hear that like the same problems kind of repeat. And because in many ways, some things we have made progress with, we just haven't actually communicated what we've done like with them. And so it's unbelievable how much more challenging it is to communicate. You think, great, we made this big shift. And sometimes we make it and the team doesn't even realize we've improved some things. Like, oh, I didn't really realize that. And you can kind of get a little bit upset. I think the note you end up saying, why don't they pay better attention to the things we're telling them? We put this in the Slack message, or we put it on a video that we sent out, and
Or we
it's
said in the
just,
quarterly meeting. Yeah.
yeah. And you're expecting one little thing that we talk about to kind of hit them in the middle of their busy client load and the way we've been doing things. So that's been more difficult. I think the other thing, I do feel like you get to a size, and maybe it's just us, is where the capital needs of the business are really different. Like they're really like, and maybe at 3 million, they're still pretty significant, but like we start looking at things like one we always look at is how big our payroll is, like each pay period. And you're like, it's a big number, right? And for a firm who hasn't taken outside capital, and really the outside capital is the two people you're talking to here, you're like, it's just, you pucker a bit and you're like, holy cow, like hopefully something doesn't happen with receivables or something weird in cash flow, because you're like, man, it's a big number. So I feel like some of the capital constraints at times you get to this size, you're like, you got to get a little more creative in the way that you capitalize the business. You can just be more intentional with how it's capitalized versus back in the day. It's a little easier to kind of bootstrap your way along. And then the communication issues are just an absolute bear. That's why I'm doing this listening tour, is because I realize I'm like, man, I am really far away from the front line, like of just what is going on with people. And we're kind of in leadership meetings, like multiple levels above, where team members are working with clients and we're making assumptions and we're making decisions. And I'm like, wait a minute, has anyone talked to the team or talked to a client about this? And we're like, no, well, that came up in this pod meeting, a few weeks ago. And I think I heard it through a survey. And you're like, that's great. But to Matthew's point, you're kind of relying on weird data points, and like, do we have the actual context from someone who is in that situation? So yeah, it gets a little bit funky for sure.
Yeah, I can give you a crazy stat. Like our churned clients last year was more than the total of clients we had at 3 million.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
like the volume and the quantities of like that we're able to do, it's just a different beast. It
Yeah.
feels
We
weird. It
we
feels
have a little
weird.
bit of a, interesting, I don't say theory, but like I've heard people talk about like, oh, can you get to negative churn and things like that? You hear about this in software, and I'm not sure. I don't think Matthew necessarily believe like there's just, you can maybe get churn so so low. Maybe if you're in a really specific vertical in your CAS practice, you could
Or if you're
alter that.
upmarket, if you were upmarket from us, you could lower
You probably
churn.
could, right? We
Because
were a lot of
so much of our
startups and
churn is
things.
people going out of business.
Yeah, huge portion going out of business. So when you think about that and go, okay, well, if you can mathematically say that, boy, if we were doing really, really well, if we were just kicking ass on churn and we only lose 1% per month, that's still at our size and scale, a ton of clients you got to just fill the hole with. So really investing in part of the sales org and the inbound marketing that does nothing but literally replaces churn or has a great upsell function to where you get some net new MRR off existing customers. So there's just some things to think about there of like where she's just replacing natural, unavoidable churn. Like that's a much bigger mechanism. Whereas in the past, like, hey, sales team, just go close things. Now it's like sales team close things to have net new, but also like we're going to have to just mathematically replace some churn and keep people consistently busy. So ton of things there.
So it's super interesting. I mean, for us, like, I think net dollar retention in excess of 100% is kind of the expectation in SaaS. Like if you're not doing that, it's like a really unhealthy business.
Yeah.
What I didn't realize is just how, and it's a little different if you're running an accounting business, running a SaaS business. Like what I didn't realize is just how manipulable those numbers are. In like, so in our example here, we don't do this intentionally, but we don't require people to start with like, you have to start with all your clients. And you have to like pay all these dollars up front. And so what that ends up looking like is like, if you're a 100 client firm and you start with us with 10 clients, you're paying us $100 a month. And then you go from $100 a month to $1,000 a month. That looks like really good net dollar retention. So
yeah, it does.
Really negative churn. But the alternative there is if you capture more of it up front, it's the same ultimate business, right? They're paying you the same amount at the end of the day, but the sort of metric itself looks less healthy.
You could pick and choose some of those metrics, yeah, absolutely, and be misled pretty wildly because of that exact dynamic of like, all right, well, yeah, most people are going to go in with a pilot approach, right? When we sell in, or even when we, as almost every single technology we look at these days, we have to kind of come in and consume it on like a pilot project at this point because it's just too disruptive to run across all the client base or all the team base. So we've got to kind of ingest it like, all right, Ben, let's try it out with 10 clients, right? So that's almost the nature of any firm, especially when you get to a firm of our size and a little bit bigger, like no one's going to slap something in just sure, let's go ahead and broad brush it across the entire client base. We tried that once before. Didn't work very well.
Just once, you think? We tried that over the years. Like a lot of times.
I can remember one specifically that we did that was like, everyone's going to love this. Let's just slap it in place. And not only did clients not love it and care, we had team members who were like, what is this? I don't want it. So yeah, that would certainly make it a bit more challenging. That's why accountants are a pain in the butt to sell to, I think. These weird cycles of where, I can't talk to you right now. I feel like I feel like some of that, I get it. I don't want to, I know we're tax season. This is unpopular to say to those who are in the middle of it. Like, I feel like there's always an excuse not to pick up the phone and do something proactive in the business, but I guess it's real. It's one to consider if you're selling into the channel, like people aren't going to pick up the phone and they are going to have those perceptions of like, well, they're the ones who dropped that email in my inbox or left the voicemail on a day that I was trying to get a filing out. So I don't know, but are you finding, Ben, that, what's working best for you from a customer acquisition standpoint? I mean, is it outbound? Is it inbound? Is it, are you seeing a point to where you get, like you guys have a lot of clients. Has it become, did you see a tipping point where suddenly there's that network effect where you're getting a lot more inbound and like people are like, oh, I know about you. Like people are hearing about you through other accountants, other channels, or have you started to see the dynamics of where deals and leads are coming from change over time?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The reality is word of mouth has always been the largest channel for us. I mean, the absolute volume that goes through word of mouth now is certainly bigger as we like have started to build a brand around the product. But word of mouth, I think it's always been the biggest channel, and it's always been like, you have to make a product that's so good that you'll tell your friends in the industry about it. In fact, I was requesting an intro from uh, one of our customers who is connected to a prospect I wanted to talk to. And she was like, this feels like I'm giving away the secret sauce. And I was like, okay, if this is why someone won't refer us, that's like a good problem to have.
That's a great problem. Yeah.
But word of mouth is the biggest. Cold outbound, there is no secret. It is the icky, distasteful, like you do have to do it if you want to grow, is a big channel for us. But honestly, the next biggest channel is trade shows. I think trade shows is a really unique opportunity where Kenji, you talked about, like, it's so hard to take the time to justify learning about how you can make your business better, as opposed to like getting the next filing done or getting the next work product out the door. But trade shows are that opportunity. It's the opportunity to like take stock, network with your peers and counterparties, and then also meet new software vendors who are solving potentially the problems that you may have in your firm in a way that gives you the sort of time and brain space to vet quickly whether or not that's something that's a fit. And so trade shows end up being a really good venue for us.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I think that's one of, we've always said on here, people know us. That's my favorite place to be honestly, at conferences, is walking the floor. It's just kind of going out and seeing what new things are out there. I mean, I don't know, that's the more interesting place to compare notes with other peers, to learn about other solutions. So, and you're right, you've already made the investment and commitment to be there and take that time away from the office. So that's a good captive audience there for sure. So you guys going to be at a lot of different events this year, I assume?
We will. I think we will see y'all at Accounting Salon.
See you there. Yep.
We'll be at Scaling New Heights. We'll be at QuickBooks Connect whenever it gets announced. ZeroCon, AICPA Engage, you name it, we should be there. And if not, we want to.
That will be fun.
Yeah.
Are y'all going into any new shows this year?
We're doing, well, I'm doing 3. I'm doing Bridging the Gap in Chicago. I'm doing ZeroCon, and I'm doing QuickBooks Connect. So.
I think from a new standpoint, no, because we just hit so many. We're probably the wrong ones to ask. We've probably tried all of them. But yeah, but I think the Bridging the Gap.
Oh, have you ever been to Scaling? I've never been to Scaling.
Never been to Scaling. I've not ever been to Scaling. That's true. Yeah, I've not. And I've heard that's improved for a lot of people. We kind of used to just didn't feel like that was really somewhere we get value. I've heard positive things, especially from people who are in the, like you, like in the tech partner space, of like, oh, that's becoming better and better as a place where a little bit of a different demographic than may hit the others, and still a large concentration of people. So I'm not surprised to hear it Scaling. We've never been, but you want to go, Matthew? I think it's Orlando.
Yeah, close enough this year.
I'm good.
Matthew's like, yeah, I'm good.
I skipped it when it was in Atlanta, so I don't think I'm going with that.
Okay, I'm going to flip back to another accounting technology CEO question for the two of you. So, okay, how do you, because this happens in other technology companies, if you are a founder, as they call it, a non-technical founder, yet the solution is pretty technically oriented, and we're talking about engineering and development, how do you develop that skill set of being able to assess technology? Like, if someone tells you, an engineer's like, oh yeah, it's on the roadmap, we're working through it. Like, is that still a spot that's uncomfortable? Like, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to learn how to trust people. Or have you developed any skills that's where like, okay, I can kind of go in and sniff out whether or not I'm being fed a line, or if we're on track? How does a non-technical founder or co-founder keep an eye on the technical side? Of course, out of having, like, hopefully there's some really good, and I know in your case with Kenny and others, some really good technical co-founders with you. But if Kenny gets hit by the bus, or Matthew, think about some of the folks on VerifyiQ, like what happens? Are we screwed?
Yeah.
Matthew, you want to take this one first?
I can take this one first if you want. I think it's like, it's easier than I expected to be able to create a relationship where we can really assess what's feasible in what time frame. So that's easier than I thought. What's still, I feel like, is the thing that holds me back and makes me the most nervous is if I push for something that creates some kind of technical debt that that like I don't understand that piece, like where the technical debt starts getting created to be able to execute on a thing we want to take to market on the marketing side. So that's a big black hole for me. And we haven't ever hit that, but I know that there will be a time where they're like, we made this choice, we built it this way. That's now a rebuild, right? So I
Yeah.
don't know what I don't know what you think.
We've certainly incurred and paid back our fair share of tech debt over the last 3 years of building Keeper. And I'd say the one sort of mechanistic way that we learn to like work with our engineering team is through our sprint cycles. So Keeper has a weekly sprint cycle. So every week we ship new software and it goes live to our customers. And then we talk to our engineers about what we shipped, what we didn't ship that we were planning on shipping, and then what we're going to ship in the following week. And by shrinking the window to 1 week, so every week we're doing this, it just gives us an opportunity to have a lot of those conversations with the engineering team so that we make sure we're constantly hearing from the engineers, here's what's like taking a long time, here are the like 80-20 decisions we can make to ship faster, here's how long we think we're going to take to do whatever the next N plus first feature is going to be.
Have you ever deconstructed, like you said, you rebuilt some technical debt? Have you ever deconstructed what you did as a CEO to cause the initial technical?
Yeah.
Do you know what it was? Like, do you know
Yeah,
what
so
you
I'll
asked
give you a
for?
perfect example. So we just released a new, we call it Templates 2.0. It's a complete overhaul of the way we do templates. It's sort of templates as it should have been done at the beginning, but we didn't do it that way. And there's sort of two reasons we didn't do it that way. One is we needed to ship it fast. And two is we didn't know all the things. Like we didn't know all the requirements of what people were going to want in templates in the sort of fully built out version of Keeper. Like when we first built out templates, it was probably like Keeper was probably, I don't know, 3 months old. So we're like, I think people will want tasks. And then we just like kept building on top of this. It was not like there was a little tech debt from moving fast and a lot more tech debt from like not necessarily thinking through what all of the things we might want this feature to do entail. Because then when we did want to add something in, it would be sort of like hacked on top. And eventually you're like, we need to do one more thing, but to do one more thing, you need to rewrite everything. Yeah. And that ultimately ended up being what we did with templates. So it's now like much more performant, much more scalable. There's fewer bugs, and we were able to add in a whole lot of additional added functionality. But I think the bigger realization is it wasn't so much like tech debt that we took on where we're consciously making this trade-off and it's going to be this terrible going forward. And it was much more, we were like, we need this to be in our customers' hands so that we can get their feedback to determine what this product will ultimately needs to be. And that in process of feedback will inevitably incur some tech debt.
How about how have you gone through anything where they're like, we're switching programming languages, like for one of the major languages, like you're just stuck, right? Like you're just like, okay, the new thing is whatever it is now, right?
Yeah, fortunately, we have not shifted programming languages. I think the closest thing we've done is like we've like upgraded our Node backend or like maybe upgraded React versions. And I think those processes are like kind of part of the engineering team and opaque for me. I'm like, do your thing, I guess.
I was like, you're talking. Yeah, you're like, that's about right. That's what those two are two we use. Like, so like when we upgrade, it's fine. But I'm like always, I just have this fear, and I don't know if it's an irrational fear that they're gonna be like, oh, there's a new thing out there that everybody's using. We should try this. And you're just like, that's a rebuild. Come on, man.
That always sounded like our website every few years, right, Matthew? Or is like,
Oh my God.
oh, like, yeah, your website looks pretty good, but
it's
the back
totally
end,
blown. Like,
like,
what do you mean
what?
it's blown?
We got to
It's like
redo
you're
all
a
of it.
mechanic, terrible mechanic. Like, I don't know.
I'm like, but you guys put it in last time for us, like 2 years ago. We got to totally redo it. Yeah, that was always our fear of like, oh, here comes a big bill. And I'm like, you couldn't see it. Like you couldn't see or really understand even from a data perspective, like what exactly are we getting out of this? So that's good. You haven't had to rebuild that before, but do you guys, going through this now, like if you were to sit back, which I guess you have to do, Matthew, on occasion, sit back in the seat of like a firm owner of like, okay, now I've got to assess technology for my firm. And now you know a little bit by being under the hood here at a tech company. Like what are some things that you would think differently about? Like, oh, if I'm going to evaluate a piece of software, one of these vendors, I mean, of course you probably can figure out pricing and, does it supposed to do what solve this issue that my client or my team's having, but like to press a little bit further in and go, okay, do I know how, are there things you would ask or do a little more diligence on, like whether it's, I don't know, around security or support or things that now after running one of these, you'd be like, do not go and hire or try this or plug this in unless it has these things. Anything that you'd take away, like if a firm owner's listening to this, like, hey, please, next time you go to a conference, go learn and explore, but like ask these few questions to help you get a better answer if you're getting close to pulling the trigger on one of these tech partners. Any thoughts?
So I'll say a couple of things. The first is if I were running an accounting firm today and I were like considering adopting Keeper, and the same as what I would consider like if I were adopting any other solution.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing to set yourself up for success is think about how you're going to ultimately roll this thing out. Like, I'm going to trial it. If I like it, I'm going to subscribe and roll it out across these clients. And then if that works well, then we're going to roll it across the firm. Like having some really definite, I think early on, if you're just still trying to decide whether the solution is the right fit for you, it's okay to just like kind of poke and prod and try and like solve the problems that you have. But then after that, think really critically about how you want to roll the software out, because that determines whether or not you're ultimately going to be happy. I mean, there's so much software that's poorly adopted, poorly deployed, and like it doesn't really matter. It's not going to be a good solution if it's not well deployed. So that's the first thing I would recommend, or I would do if I were a firm owner. And then second thing is I would bet on slope. And I would say this is like just seeing what we built with Keeper. I think our customers who bought in early on when Keeper was like this terribly immature product, like what I've said before, and I still kind of believe it's a little irresponsible of them to have like adopted Keeper in like, I don't know, April of 2021. And I think they've been rewarded for that. I think betting on slope and betting on like software companies you see who continue to ship new features and who continue to make the product better will ensure that you end up picking the right solution for the long haul, and you don't pick a solution and then 6 months down the road or a year down the road, you like look at the other alternative you were looking at and they've like completely blown by the solution you're stuck using because you picked one that like happened to be $1 cheaper or happened to be like have this one particular feature that the other platform wouldn't have for another 3 or 6 months.
And when you say slope, Ben, are you referring to just release cycles? Like, how often? Yeah. So someone could, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Like slope of product maturation, I guess you would say is the axis there.
Yeah.
Do you feel guilty about raising those people's prices? I'm just super curious.
We've never raised their prices.
Oh, wow.
Okay, you will.
We have never raised prices in the history of the business.
We did that for the.
I don't feel guilty.
We did that for a long time, and then we had to. It was like the first 15 years of business. We didn't raise prices.
Well, in the accounting business, yeah.
Yeah.
I will say
VerifyiQ?
It's
No,
tougher.
in the accounting business.
Yeah.
It's tougher when you have like labor as your input. I mean, we have labor for a lot of our inputs, but it's tougher when you like if the cost of accounting software, or sorry, the cost of accounting wages goes up, like you kind of have to increase your prices.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We didn't for like 15 years. But we did do it VerifyiQ. We did have to raise prices, but we were out of market. Like we had to get it to where it was sustainable. Like we had added so many features at that thing, and then just to keep everybody on the same plan, we had to raise it. So
yeah,
that was a tough choice.
And I will say, like it's one of those things where it can give you the oxygen you need to actually build the software that ends up solving your customers' problems, right? Like if you are not making enough to invest more in R&D, and then you can't make the product better, ultimately you're shortchanging your customers by not charging them enough
Right.
to continue to develop the product.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we got. It was like, oh, we had added so much because when we added like our sales enablement tool, we were like, oh, we gotta like this is a whole other feature that helps out the sales side instead of just the quality control side, you know?
Yeah.
So
Back to something you mentioned before, Ben. So let's say I'm at AICPA Engage. I come by the Keeper booth. I'm like intrigued. I'm like, that sounds kind of interesting. Is it helpful? Do you think it's helpful to the overall process? I think it would be helpful to you as a business. But if I, as a firm owner, actually articulated what our process was for onboarding a software, like, hey, this is great, but like just to set expectations, here's the way it would have to work. Now, granted, I know that's something you mentioned that'd be helpful for the firm owner. Is that also helpful for you guys, or is that frustrating? I mean, can you work with? Yeah. Okay.
he's
So
totally lying.
we have
The
customers.
salespeople then just ignore that, and then they go
Oh,
straight
I want to
to.
close the big deal.
Our customers at Keeper have a very short relationship with very short time where they're spending talking to sales and a very long time where they're spending talking to customer success. So customer success is really a quarterback of getting Keeper properly adopted and properly deployed in a new customer's firm. And that information is super helpful for them. Like you could think of a CSM as like a temporary or very job specific project manager that works for you. Like their incentives are totally aligned. They want to make sure you roll the software out. And so knowing how you want to roll the software out is the most helpful information for those CSMs, because then they can take that information and work with you to develop a plan that works for rolling out Keeper.
Interesting. So you're probably right there, Matthew. The salespeople work in the booth probably go, just buy the whole. How many clients do you have? Just buy all of it.
Just come on.
Whereas
buy.
the CSMs are like, no. Let's get this in here. Let's get them the adoption, and the stickiness kind of going.
I was just answering it real.
Yeah.
At the booth, the salesperson's there, not the CSM. So just saying.
For what it's worth, oftentimes we're there a lot. But for what it's worth, the way we comp our sales team is oriented to align them with success. So it's like if we lose a customer, if they like oversell someone and then we lose a customer, that gets clawed back from their commissions. So we try to really.
It sounds like an accountant built that plan.
And an accountant built the spreadsheet that monitors that plan as well. And it is an ugly spreadsheet, I will tell you that.
You'll as you guys continue to scale, that's I don't know if it's a sign of success or what, but every payroll company we've ever met with has said, I've never seen so many crazy complex comp plans. I'm like, well, welcome to a scaling accounting firm where a bunch of accountants dream up different comp plans for everyone. Every single payroll provider we've worked with is like, you guys are nuts. I'm like, well, this is what happens when you let accountants have spreadsheets, and every single team needs a different flavor of a comp plan. So it definitely does happen. So
what would you say are the like weirdest quirks of Yelp? We actually talked about this on our last call. You mentioned that a lot of your comp was variable rather than fixed. I'm curious, what are some of the big drivers that make up that variable component?
The two largest drivers is book of business or billable hours. So in our service lines, like most of the people are either compensated on book of business or billable hours, one of those two.
They're pretty closely related. We'd obviously like them to be all book of business. That infers that, yes, you're still managing revenue, but that it's not that kind of fixed binary relationship of all I have to care about is whenever I record an hour, what did I do for that hour? We'd like it to be a bit more broad about a deliverable of value we're giving, and possibly even extend beyond and be like, hey, I'm responsible for a team, not other people's hours as well too. But yeah, we've got a bit of both of those two going on. So
yeah, I can only imagine the more you want to tie to that book of business, the less easy that is going to be to like just have like an automated one click, we run payroll and that's what it is.
Yeah, we don't have an automated, we
do not. We spent a lot of money on.
We have a phenomenal team that keeps us
accounting. Yeah, but this has been something I've done forever, like in crazy ways where I can think about me being a controller in between public accounting, in between Acuity of like building comp plans. And I used to love it. Like I would sit there with the CEO and he'd kind of think of all these crazy ideas. I'm like, oh, cool. I could model that out and I'd build this. And even when I became the CFO of that company, like I loved like getting in and kind of building these funky comp plans that had all these levers. And I was a firm believer for way too long. Like this is how you manage people. It's all about the right incentives and I can build that. I mean, I used to almost think of like these masterpieces of Excel wizardry idea that like if this will get people to do all the right things and then it never works out. I mean, parts of it work and are interesting, but like they used to get so complicated. I remember I used to have to sit down with the sales team at my old company every single month just to walk through the commission plan. I mean, I would get all this credit from the CEO. He was like, oh, you're like the boy wonder here building these crazy comp plans. However, the sales team couldn't even understand them. They couldn't even figure it out. They had to come to my office. And so it was, you realize when there's that disalignment, you're like, that's not good. Even though the CEO is like, this is great. I love how there's 13 different levers that move if, clawbacks and draw periods and recoverable draw, non-recoverable, and there's in accelerators and things. I mean, all that stuff was fun to build, but man, if the person who's actually getting paid cannot calculate it, there's a problem.
You're doing something
Then
wrong.
you don't actually have a lever. If they can't understand, apply the comp plan to their behavior, like you don't end up incentivizing behavior change.
You don't. And so, yeah, all those from the variable side, we still have a lot of those. We've gone back and forth on profit share and things like that over the years. I mean, I think also us being around so many tech companies is good and bad at times. We end up modeling a lot of interesting kind of behavior from tech companies. And I think we've made some good decisions at times, but also some ones where like, wait a minute, this is for a very, very high growth venture-backed company, like us trying to apply it into it. Even though we're a relatively fast growing accounting firm, like, okay, that doesn't really work. Everything, even like roles like the CSM role, I was convinced that we needed a customer success team. And we probably do to some extent, but how long did we have customer success, Matthew? We had a team of like 4 or 5 years. We trying to figure out like, oh, here's retention. We still to this day, what you just said it in a meeting the other week, Matthew, like who owns churn today in our organization?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I don't know. And so all we know how to do is kind of model that after like, well, if we had a CSM team, like that's what they're focused on is retention. But what does retention look like? I mean, we know what it looks like when they leave, but like in an accounting firm, what are the behaviors that you see beforehand that show you that it's going to lead to a churn, right? Because reactively, who cares if you're measuring churn, if you're not doing something beforehand, whereas in a tech company, like, okay, we don't have users in the system. We're seeing this particular, they're not in there. What does that look? So we've had a tough time figuring out what does proactively a possibility of churn look like from an accounting CAS standpoint? We're still we're not sure. I don't know.
It's actually a really interesting question. I mean, do you have any like I don't know, do you do NPS scoring? Do you have like any sort of?
Yeah.
Yep.
So we do NPS scoring, but I don't know what your thought would be on this is where, because clients hire us to do the accounting for them, it feel like it's almost like an inverse of what you'd see from a tech company. Like, right, I would be super worried if like, okay, we don't see any sign-ins in the system. We don't see any activity if you're a software company. Whereas I almost wonder at times like where if we saw lots of activity in the books by the client, they're like, what, didn't we hire you guys to do this for me? Like, why am I in here doing it? Like that would almost be a sign of churn on the opposite end from the accounting standpoint. So I don't know. That's kind of why we've backed off of the CSM in that traditional way of like, what is a precursor to churn? So we've thought of things like, that's one of the reasons why VerifyiQ has been important. Like, well, even if clients aren't looking at their books, we should be health scoring at least how good of a job we're doing. If the client's not going to know and they're not looking, we should at least be doing it ourselves. At some point, they're going to look and say, why hasn't this bookkeeper reconciled this account in the past 3 months? If they see that, well, then we're probably going to be out. But I don't know. I would love to solve that one. I know Matthew would love that one because then he could point to someone saying, hey, you're responsible for churn.
Well, no, what we're looking at now is like looking at churn in a different way, right? So we have like we've gone through like the last quarter we've gone through and said let's put our clients in like stages, like based on where the client is, because clients are in different places. Some just want a tax return, some need full gap books, and some are somewhere in the middle to oversimplify our stages. So we have our three stages, and then we can look at like where's the churn by stage, then where's the churn by industry, where's the churn by employee. So we're just starting to get into that reporting right now to really look into it because, um, one of our hypotheses is when you have staff turnover in a services business, you have churn on the customer side, but it's anecdotal because we're not looking at the data because we've never had to look at the data because we've never been this big, right? We just knew, oh yeah, we lost so-and-so because so-and-so was on it, right? So
Interesting. So that's like, it's almost like you want, like you have these signals that are like, if you could just collect the anecdotes, you could sort of refine them
Right.
into, then at the very least, like if you have staff turnover, you can say like, okay, pay extra special attention to these accounts for the next like 2 months to make sure they stay on track.
correct. So we have been doing so we have like 6 data points we look at that do that. But now it's at 600 clients, it's such a data problem. So you got 6 data points a month on 600 clients, right? And
Yeah.
so like at some point and then you have busy people that are working on stuff, right? So who owns churn? Like somebody should be analyzing that data is the punchline at the end of the day. And we're trying to figure out how to do that. So we're
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to do that with software, VerifyiQ, or with people, and with Salesforce, with the different tools that we have at Acuity.
Objective data, subjective data. We're kind of trying to combine both to figure out
And
what are
just
those
try to
leading indicators.
synthesize it into like what do you
So
need to do, right? You have to create an action for somebody, right?
yeah, what are those 6 data points? I mean, to the
Or
extent that's not the Acuity secret sauce, if it is, I understand.
it's like a lot of secret sauce, dude. I can't tell you that
Oh,
shit.
whatever. Yeah, right. Matthew never keeps secrets.
What are the 6 things?
Do you remember they are? Or you just make them up?
No, I
He's
got
gonna
them
look.
written
He's
down.
got them in a notebook. He's always got these notebooks.
Don't make fun of
I
my notebooks,
I
dude.
I actually think my like one of my core MOs is if it's important, write it down. So I mostly do that on my computer, but I respect the notebook.
He's got the notebook. Let's see if you can find it. 'Cause he's got all these huge stack of notebooks.
What?
Here's
Don't make fun of me, dude. Like I'm not gonna
I,
tell you now. Like you can get
you,
off the thing and I'll talk to
you,
Ben.
you know that
Like
if you
if
tell me
you're gonna
not to make,
be,
you know that you tell me if you're not to make fun of you, I'm only going to lean in harder on that. Now when I've found a soft spot, a sore spot, now I just go for, just like you to me. This is what we do. This is one of the topics we're going to be on stage talking about is our partnership where we've managed not to kill each other. That is our Chicago keynote speech of two
okay, you
partnerships. No,
ready?
just kidding. Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So health of books,
Health of books,
NPS,
NPS.
financial change. So lots of cash, lots of revenue, like growth,
Okay.
whatever.
Okay.
Industry change. Uh, Something, well, this is part of the account management. It's not really in the health. Like somebody's done something on social, some kind of marketing outside, like people are like either complaining or bragging on social about us. And then a staff member identifies a problem. I call it a hand raise. So like a hand raise where like somebody needs to do something.
Can
And
you go
those
back
have
to
different.
what this is even me being ignorant. Industry change? What do you mean on that one?
Okay, so Abby the other day identified like there was a change with Amazon, right, and Shopify, like in how they're going to, I can't remember the particulars about it, but it was like, okay, the Amazon's changing how they're doing such and such, this and another, and she was like telling the team, whatever, here's how we're dealing with it. Here's how we work with A2X. We figured it out. We've got it working out. It's going to roll out in March. We got it under control. So I was like, I saw that. And I was like, send that to every client. Like, so like, I'm thinking from a client health perspective, if the client doesn't know we're doing that, like, and we don't communicate, like, hey, that's a huge value to being with Acuity, is we've got Abby, we've got an e-commerce expert tracking the industry changes and
I
fixing
gotcha.
it on your account before it's implemented, talking to the product vendors,
That makes
right?
sense to me. I didn't understand the verbiage. I'm like, they're changing industries, different verticals. It's just a change
Sorry.
happening within the
Uh,
specific industry,
So
like a
something in
system change.
e-com, it would be like something happening in with Amazon or
Right.
Shopify
One of
or
the
somebody
critical,
like that.
one of the critical systems they're using changes
Yeah,
something.
like if in SaaS, if it's Stripe, right? If Stripe makes a change and you're on it, like a technology change, but there could be industry changes. Like the industry change, we flubbed real bad because the tax change in SaaS on the freaking
Oh,
R&D,
yes.
right? So that was a killer because everybody was like, oh, they're going to fix it. Congress is going to fix it. Congress is going to fix it. So we all delayed anybody who delayed their messaging got screwed. Like we should have told people like, prep for this, prep for this, prep for this. Like Congress is idiots, Congress is idiots, Congress is idiots, but we didn't. And then clients got surprised when Congress didn't act, right? So that's
Well,
another similar
and
thing.
also,
Ben
if
knows
you go
this as
out
a
there and
business
if you
owner,
go out
like
there and
that
make a
was a big one,
statement,
right?
go back and make a statement like that Congress is a bunch of idiots, you'll technically never be wrong. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that's
you can schedule
irrefutable.
that one to send every Friday to all your clients, and it will be relevant for something.
We weren't
But
wrong,
like,
were we?
but that was an industry change,
I got
right?
you.
That hit people's pocketbook that we got caught flat-footed on, and we should have better been prepared for, right? So those are the categories of things you have to track and be proactive on, and can change kind of the level of, I think, what's going on. But those are the six
Matthew's
things
six
I think you
metrics.
have to have and under control and account management. I don't know how to grade them or whatever. I'm still working on that.
I was gonna say, okay, I was gonna say I haven't seen any data, but I got you. We got to figure out how we measure some of those. Some of those are pretty easy to measure. Others are like self-reported, or we're gonna have to do something there. Again, more. I think we've realized that there is going to be something subjective, some objective and subjective data that needs to be looked at or combined in some kind of scoring mechanism to say, somebody go spend some time, to your point earlier, Ben, go spend some time the next couple months showing some love or doing something extra here to get them over this hump, because there's some dynamics, cash balance is changing. There's some weird industry things going on. Like we got to put some attention and a spotlight on these to make sure that they don't end up walking out the door. So
Yeah.
cool. All right, gentlemen. I'm not going to ask Ben to rate his water, because I know
It better be a
I don't
10.
know, unless, yeah, it's probably pretty good water. I
I
know
think it's
some,
a 5. It's a
it's a
5.
five, it's 5 out of 5 on the water. I'm, I've got mine queued up here. So Matthew, be thinking, get that palate kind of thinking here.
I finished this like 20 minutes ago, so
I know you did. I had a larger one. I mean, that's the good thing about getting an Irish stout. They usually give you the big like pint glasses that like going into an English pub.
like 4% ABV.
It's so great. I think Irish stouts are such sleepers. I mean, it's like a Guinness, right? Which you can just sit here. It's a 4%er. It's super low in calories, which people forget. Like good, just taste. I mean, it's not the greatest for like a hot
Diet
day,
beer.
but like, oh no, diet beer. It's not like a Mick Ultra or something, or Coors Light. People sleep on that and forget. Like, man, that's good. I just think those are awesome. It does remind me of being in pubs over in the UK, which is exciting. I'm going to go 4.25. It just hits me right today. It's going to be a good one. Matthew, I'm very curious. And even if you rate this low, I won't tell my wife that, you think this about her favorite beer.
Well, I mean, the tea aftertaste is not my kind of thing.
I could have told you that's not
I
going to
mean,
be your
like
jam.
there's a little bit of a tea aftertaste, so I'm a 3.75 on this one.
Three,
Ooh, do we have to
seven,
split the
five.
difference with the ratings?
You're bringing its average down. I mean, the average
No,
of when we
no,
checked
the
with
average barely down.
that's
But I mean,
okay.
like people got to know it's tea. I guess
Yeah,
people know
it's a
that.
little bit different. You got to like the style, and you stylistic, you got to like it. And so,
It's really
Matt,
smooth though, to be like the aftertaste is what brings it down for me. So
okay, that's fair. That's fair. Aftertaste on the water, Ben, was good on your side.
Non-existent, which is just the way I like it.
No aftertaste. We're gonna look for some good gluten-free beer. There's certainly enough. It's amazing how much NA beer there is out these days. I've got a bunch of it in my fridge, but I have not seen the gluten-free yet. So I'll keep my eyes out for you. We'll keep our eyes out for the Shiner that's coming inbound. I love some Shiner. Thank you for sending that, my friend. And thank you for catching up with us here today. I feel like we need to get Ben back because we could do some long forms with Ben easily, just the way that, we love ping ponging questions around. But we'll link some show notes and back to Keeper. I definitely recommend you hit the conferences, going by the booth. Ben and Kenny are very often there. It's cool. I always think too, and there's founders at the booth. So oftentimes you'll see they've got a great team as well there as well too. So anywhere else, Ben, that people can connect or find you? Where's the best place?
I mean, you can email me directly, ben.stein at
Yep.
Keeper.App. I'm always available, always happy to hop on the phone. Truly, it's like, it is the great thing about business is being able to hop on the phone and talk to our customers, talk to our prospects, talk to anyone in the industry, talk to the fine folks at Acuity in Kenji and Matthew and anyone else on your team. Always a delight. So thank you for having me on here. I appreciate it.
Glad to have you on, brother. Cheers. Thanks for listening and watching. Feel free to send us some beer. If you'd like to sponsor Drink What You Think, send us some comments about what you want us to chat about next. Thanks, everyone.